Go ahead.
Mr. President, would you like President Zelensky to do more on Joe Biden and investigation?
No, I want him to do whatever he can. This was not his fault. He wasn't there. He's just been here recently. But whatever he can do in terms of corruption, because the corruption's massive. Now, when Biden's son walks away with millions of dollars from Ukraine and he knows nothing, and they're paying him millions of dollars, that's corruption. When Biden's son walks out of China with $1.5 billion in a fund, and the biggest funds in the world can't get money out of China, and he's there for one quick meeting and he flies in on Air Force Two, I think that's a horrible thing. I think it's a horrible thing, but I'm going far beyond that. I know the president, and I've read a lot about Ukraine, I've read a lot about a lot of countries. He wants to stop corruption. He was elected, I think, number one on the basis of stopping corruption, which unfortunately has plagued Ukraine. And if he could do that, he's doing really the whole world a big favor. I know, and I think he's going to be successful.
This is Trump during a press conference with Ukrainian President Zelensky, in which he's doing some desperate damage control. Right off the bat, he tries to insulate himself from accusations of asking Zelensky to look into Biden by pivoting instead to the word corruption. He's not looking to investigate Biden, he's only looking to investigate corruption. But that's just his code word for looking into Biden. He literally defines corruption in the very next sentence as having to do with Joe Biden.
But whatever he can do in terms of corruption, because the corruption's massive. Now, when Biden's son walks away with millions of dollars from Ukraine and he knows nothing, and they're paying him millions of dollars, that's corruption.
No, I don't want him to look into Biden. I want him to look into corruption, which specifically pertains to Joe Biden. And we've seen this before, where Trump uses some diversionary code word thinking that it'll insulate himself from any wrongdoing. When Don Jr., Manafort, and Kushner met with a Kremlin-linked lawyer at Trump Tower for dirt on Hillary Clinton, the administration claimed that it was to discuss adoption. And they've dug in their heels on this lie until the bitter end, when emails were released explicitly stating that, lo and behold, the meeting was to discuss dirt on Hillary Clinton. The email read that they had documents that would incriminate Hillary and her dealings with Russia and would be very useful to your father. This is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government's support for Mr. Trump. To which Don Jr. replied within minutes, "If it's what you say, I love it." Sounds like adoption to me. And the White House and Republicans are now claiming that because Trump didn't explicitly ask for a quid pro quo, because Trump didn't say outright, "I will release $250 million in military aid along with an extra $140 million that you didn't ask for in exchange for you opening an investigation into my political opponent Joe Biden," that he's somehow in the clear. But for Christ's sake, you don't need to announce a quid pro quo in a presidential proclamation for there to be the implication that it is, in fact, a quid pro quo. But don't take my word for it.
He doesn't have to say, "Go lie for me" to be a crime. You don't have to say, "Let's obstruct justice" for it to be a crime. You judge people on their conduct, not magic phrases.
All of this comes on the heels of the White House releasing a transcript of Trump's call with Zelensky, and Republicans are claiming victory by pointing to the fact that, again, Trump didn't explicitly say, "Hey, let's do a quid pro quo where I leverage American military aid in exchange for the promise of an investigation into my political opponent." Only Trump himself explained that other officials were on the call, so of course he wouldn't make it explicit because he's not that dumb. Well, no, he's not that dumb. And keep in mind, too, that the unclassified transcription of the call isn't so much a transcription as it is note-taking by Trump's own staff, a point that is made on the actual phone call memo itself. And yet still, the readout is damning for Trump. During the call, Trump says, "We do a lot for Ukraine, we spend a lot of effort and a lot of time," which is a reference to the $250 million in military assistance that we send them. He then says, "The US has been very, very good to Ukraine. I wouldn't say that it's reciprocal necessarily because things are happening that are not good," in which Trump broaches the topic of reciprocity, where he again suggests that we give to them but aren't getting enough in return. Now comes the requests by Trump, in which he says, "I would like you to do us a favor though, because our country has been through a lot, and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with CrowdStrike." And this is a reference to a conspiracy theory pushed by Giuliani suggesting that Ukraine has something to do with the email stolen from the DNC. And then, of course, the other thing. There's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that, so whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. It sounds horrible to me. In which Trump, again, right after discussing the idea of reciprocity, ask Zelensky to look into Biden. And finally, Zelensky responding that his new prosecutor will be 100% my person, my candidate, and will look into the situation. So to sum up, Trump was clear that the US gives aid to Ukraine, that he doesn't feel like he's been given much in return, but he just so happens to have a favor to ask, all while our continuing aid is still in flux, and Zelensky acquiesces. And then the aid is released, along with an additional $140 million. So I'm not saying this is an outright quid pro quo, but yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. The fact is that Trump was caught in the act of yet again conspiring with a foreign power to interfere in our election. So he might try to fall back on semantics to absolve himself, but what Trump tried to do is obvious. And the fact that Trump had no choice but to actually release a transcript that was in and of itself proof of that goes to show that he knows just how much trouble he's in.